Huddle Up Podcast is sponsored by Arena Eats. Log on to the website arenaeats.app, that's arenaeats.app, for the ultimate fan experience. At your favorite sports venue, Arena Eats mobile app, pre-order, express pickup, and in-seat delivery. How do you place your order? Sean, one of the biggest stories in college football this past weekend was the return of the Big Ten, and with the return of the Big Ten gave us one of our biggest upsets so far of the college football season, and that came in Bloomington, Indiana. The Hoosiers playing a team that you and I, being originally you and me still from Central Pennsylvania, we know the team, we know the fans all so well, and it came down to in overtime. The Hoosiers went for two. They and I'm gonna put the picture up here. You know, this is the shot. Now this from a bit of an angle, but we've seen the shot, we've seen the play. You know, and this got everybody's reaction. Obviously, for people who don't like Penn State are going to agree with the call. People who love Penn State are not going to like the call. First off, I knew that I said, because my wife and I were watching the game, and when they scored the touchdown, I said, I bet they go for two. Because at that point, what is Indiana? Indiana has nothing to lose at that. They've already won. They've already won their battle for that game. And we've seen this before. When you have a team that's the underdog, a big underdog, they go for two. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. But if you keep kicking, the longer that game goes on, eventually that hand gets played to Penn State because they arguably are the better team.
Well, sure, and you know, having the chance to go second there. You give up the touchdown. You got to go in from 25 yards. Wasn't an easy march necessarily. I mean, they did get in, but that may be your last chance to control a walk-off because you got to take the ball first. And if you can't get in the end zone, you know, or heaven forbid, miss a field goal where you give Penn State that advantage to see what they need to do, you know, you can, going for two was to me a no-brainer there, especially since, you know, you kind of let Penn State come back in it. You had a chance to lose it in regulation and were able to kind of hang in there and have that chance to put it away. Why wouldn't you? As far as the call goes, watching in real time, when you're where that official is on the outside of the pylon and the pylon comes towards you, which is what it did, whether that ball touched out of bounds on the line, whatever happened, something hit the inside of that pylon because it came out towards the sideline. So for him to see that and see where the stretch was, and you know, the initial stretch, I was like, he's got it. When the ball started dropping, he was held back a lot farther than I thought he would be. When you slow it down 100 times, it makes it real easy, you know, if you don't want it to be in, to see it that way. Because it is real close whether that, you know, the more I watch it, the more I think the tip did cross the edge of the goal line. It was just an issue of did it happen before it touched out of bounds. And, you know, I think the best judgment call was made at the time on the field. And I think that the call to overturn it would have been a way bigger mishandling of the situation than to leave it stand. They didn't say confirmed. Yeah. It was just one of those scenarios where they would have called him short, I don't think there's any way they would have called it the other way. So, you know, whether it was a cross or not, only the sports gods and the tip of that football may know for sure. But I don't think the officials blew anything at the end of that game. You know, and if you're Penn State and you're mad at an official, let's just remember what the spread on that game was and that you were planning on wandering into Ohio State with a chance to maybe crack the top four. So that's not happening. And, you know, it's just one of those. Last week I talked about how Penn State may be getting Ohio State at a good time because the wheels may not be rolling. I think maybe they fell victim to that, and Indiana caught them at the right time, and they just weren't quite there. and had the wheels kind of, they didn't get spinning fast enough, quick enough, and you kind of let a home team catch you off guard.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think you made a great point with the call that was made on the field with the official. I think the right call was made on the field. And when you went to review, and I know, we got a lot of comments on Facebook and Twitter. We appreciate all the comments. I'm not going to be able to get them all here. Obviously, if you can guess, the Penn State faithful not happy with the call. People who are not Penn State fans tend to agree. But the bottom line is, not only do you not, because there was no shot from directly on the goal line. Both the picture I shared here in the video and the angle of the videos that were shown on the replay all came at an angle. So first off, that's a disadvantage if you're Penn State.
Yeah.
Secondly, I've watched this play in slow motion so many times, and I'm still not 100% sure that the tip of the ball didn't break the plane of the end zone before it even touched the pylon and or out of bounds.
Yeah, while it was in the air, you mean?
Yes.
Like while it was airborne. And that's what I kept looking at too. That may have already crossed.
Yeah, and that's another reason why I think you cannot overturn this. Regardless of what the call on the field was, I think the decision to uphold the call on the field is the right decision, because there was, whether you agree with it or not, the bottom line in replay to overturn a call is it has to be indisputable. Huddle Up Podcast is sponsored by Arena Eats. Log on to the website arenaeats.app, that's arenaeats.app, for the ultimate fan experience. At your favorite sports venue, Arena Eats mobile app, pre-order, express pickup, and in-seat delivery. How do you place your order? And I'm gonna go ahead and say it. I'm probably gonna make some friends of mine mad that are Penn State fans. But if you try and tell me that the video is inconclusive, like indisputable, that ball was out of bounds, you're lying to yourself.
Yeah,
you're mad because you lost. And don't get me wrong,
and you can be mad.
Right, you can be mad. If I was Notre Dame, I'd be mad. If this was Notre Dame losing that way, I'd be mad. So I'm not faulting you for being mad. I'm faulting you for after the initial anger is there, for not being able to step back and say, okay.
Right.
The decision.
It's going to cloud your judgment at the moment of the play, but to let it cloud your judgment 2 and 3 and 4 days later, you got to let it go, man. Like, you got to move on.
Yeah, and that's the bottom line. We have some great conversation here with Tyler and Tanner. Tanner says they made the right call by letting the decision on the field stand, not enough to overturn. Same with Tyler. They both agree. And yeah, I'm 100% with Tyler. Penn State shouldn't have lost the game. 100%. Like, Penn State did this to themselves. Penn State put themselves in the situation. And another thing that Penn State fans don't want to admit, or you should be angry about as well, is the fact that not only did the running back Ford, I think his name is, he should have went down after he had the first down. Sure, that's also a kid who's a sophomore who only carried like 26 times last year, who has open field in front of him. Instinct takes over there. I think you should also be mad at James Franklin, because you had 1 minute and 45 seconds. Indiana had one timeout. You had 1st and 10. At the very least, you take 3 knees. You're going to get the ball down to about 20 seconds, kick a field goal, and then Indiana has to go down and score a touchdown. Not even kick a field goal. Right. They have to score a touchdown at that point. So I think, the defense was bad. The quarterback play was bad for the first 3 quarters. This looked like a team that was not prepared. I also don't think Penn State, you can look at those preseason rankings all you want. And this is why, especially this year, preseason rankings aren't worth the paper they're printed on. This isn't the number 2 team in the Big Ten. They're not. And all the analysts saying that is Penn State going to be the team to knock off Ohio State? No. The defense stinks. The secondary's real bad. So not only is Ohio State going to torch you, there's going to be other teams in the Big Ten that are probably going to torch you this year, or at least put up a fight.
Very possible. It's very possible. I mean, I know, we'll probably get to our picks a little bit later, but Michigan looked way stronger than I expected them to, especially out of the chute. So
imagine what having not Shea Patterson under center will do for you.
It's unreal how he was in there that long. But you're right. There's other teams, and there's a few teams that probably aren't as good, top to bottom as Penn State that are going to give them a little bit of a run, because if they can't tighten up that defense, like you said, Indiana for a good chunk of that game, even though they weren't scoring points every time, was able to move the ball pretty much every drive they had. So I don't, I think with the evolution of the game, the kind of mobile quarterback that obviously surprised them, even though you knew who he was. It's a whole different ballgame when you're asked to go out there and actually make the stop.
Absolutely, Tyler. That's a question here. Does college football need pylon cams? Yeah, I think all football can benefit from them, but you have to make them really good. And I think that's where the problem is, because I think ESPN uses them in the NFL as like kind of a trial thing. They're not an official
right. No, they don't
replay
get used
cam.
For reviews.
The problem I think with pylon cams is obviously the pylons can be knocked over. And that they may not necessarily come into play, or they can be easily blocked. And I know other camera angles can be blocked as well. But I think you and I have talked about, not on this show, but with the level of technology, and we have the NFL Next Gen stats that can tell me that DK Metcalf reached a top speed of 22.47 miles per hour and ran 109 yards. To catch up to Budda Baker, and they can tell me that
within minutes.
They can tell me that within about a minute and a half. So, and it's because of like wearable technology and things like so. You can't tell me that we can't be far, or we could already potentially be there. That they couldn't put some sort of chip in each end of the football and put sensors on the goal line, at the plane of the goal line, that could basically put up like a force field, almost like a
and
dog.
Tell me whether the ball crossed.
Almost
right.
like an invisible dog fence.
Walmart can tell me if I'm walking one of their bottles of cologne out the front door.
Right.
But we can't figure out if a football's crossing the plane.
Hell,
of a goal line.
you got our dad a baseball jersey in Disney that they forgot to take the tag off, that buzzed in a store up here when you tried to take it back. So
yeah, tried to take a return and it buzzed it.
So you can't tell me they can't put a chip in a football in 2020.
We've had doors that open themselves for decades.
Exactly.
You can't get a goal line that does the same thing.
So I
unless
think
you're the Jets defense, then it opens itself.
Yeah, really. So I think that should be something that, and maybe it already is, and maybe that's a technology.
I'm sure it has to be something they're working on. But I just never really understood like how we have, and the pylon cam is one where like, yeah, it's great. The other thing is like much like first down markers, they're not always true. If they are getting knocked down, you'd have to make sure that it had a designated secure spot, that it wouldn't move, and it had it's very easy for that camera to get skewed and not be a true shot down the goal line too. But we have overhead cams, zip line cams, blimp cams. We have all these cams, and yet every time it goes to review, there's not a single one that looks straight down on the goal line from the angle of that plane. That's just baffling.
Well, do you remember back
in domes and things? I don't.
I mean, do you remember back? I think it was like the Super Bowl around like the year 2000 or 2003 or something like that, where they had all of those cameras around the perimeter of the thing so that they could do like the 360 during the halftime show. And so I'm like,
oh yeah.
Like, why are we not using some of this 20 years later in the thing? And yeah, Tanner says here it's a bit wild. Any of the Big Ten teams are even ranked in the top 10 without playing a game.
One of them has moved into the top 4.
Yeah,
in case anybody willing to talk about
it. Yeah, and I mean, there was a good point, man. And this comes down to my issue with preseason rankings every year in general, but this year even more. And yeah, Ohio State jumped Notre Dame. Did I think it was kind of ridiculous? Sure, but 2 weeks from now, Notre Dame plays Clemson. If Notre Dame beats Clemson, they're probably going to be the number 1 team in the country. and deservedly so. If they lose, they're going to fall. So it doesn't really bother me at this point that they are above Notre Dame. Like, it's a little annoying. I also saw like an article today, like somebody was talking about like Notre Dame shouldn't even be in the top 5 because of how bad their schedule is. I'm like, okay, so you want us to join a conference to legitimize ourselves. Now we're in one, and you're bitching that our schedule's too soft. Put it this way: you just hate Notre Dame. Just say that.
You just tell us.
Like, just tell us you hate us.
Like,
like,
we
that's
hate
fine.
you guys, and I'll be like, okay, that's fair. You're allowed to hate us.
But yeah, it's for me. Preseason rankings are silly. This year it's even worse because conferences and things are starting at different times. So it is what it is. If Ohio State runs the table and they do it convincingly, Ohio State belongs in the top 4. Rankings in the middle of October normally are useless. This year even worse because there's still two whole months of football till we get to the college football playoff rankings. So I try not to get too riled up about rankings at this point. But ultimately, for me, and we'll move on here. The correct call was made. The decision on the field,
touchdown stands.
Yeah, the 2-point stands. Penn State lost. If you shouldn't have been in that spot to begin with, you did it to yourself. Be mad about it. That's fine. I'd be mad about it too. But it's not the officials' fault for A, the call on the field, and B, upholding the call on the field because there was nothing there to overturn. Huddle Up Podcast is sponsored by Arena Eats. Log on to the website arenaeats.app, that's arenaeats.app, for the ultimate fan experience. At your favorite sports venue, Arena Eats mobile app, pre-order, express pickup, and in-seat delivery. How do you place your order?